He's not a candidate yet, may never become a candidate. So I think I'm allowed to make this wisecrack. There's an emergency announcement at 4:00 this afternoon relating to Nigel Farage. Natasha Clark is here to tell us what we think about said. He's pre-announcing the emergency announcement.
He is. He's getting all of Westminster in complete frenzy this afternoon about what on earth he could be announcing with his emergency election announcement today. Now, what we do know is that he's going to appear later on with Richard Tice, who's the leader of Reform, at a press conference later today. And all eyes are on whether he will announce a U-turn and say that he will stand to become an MP for what would be the 8th time. Richard Tice was asked about that earlier today. He refused to rule out that possibility, but he did say that this announcement will be not any form of deal with the Tory party, which is another suggestion that is what could happen. So I look back at his last interview, Nigel Farage's last interview last week with LBC. He was speaking to Nick Ferrari last week for some clues about what this might be. Here's what he had to say about the state of the election so far.
The election's over. Labour have won. It's a foregone conclusion. That's done. It's over. The question is, who is going to provide opposition? And the Conservative Party will be in opposition, but they won't be the opposition. They hate each other. They're split down the middle. And what we need is a voice in there of genuine opposition and alternative. The Conservatives can't provide that. Reform, if they win seats in Parliament, can.
And when Nick asked him about why he is not standing himself and why he's not been able to win a single seat in Parliament so far, here's what he had to say about that.
Well, I only really tried once.
Well, you stood in a number of constituency elections.
Oh, yeah. But UKIP was a pressure group. UKIP was a pressure group that used elections to push its message. I mean, saving deposits was a blooming miracle when we were at UKIP in the early days. Right. I had one serious go, and that was in a constituency just a few miles from where I am now in Thanet South. And do you know what happened? The Conservatives won, and the agent got a 9-month prison sentence for gross overspending and breaking of election rules. So the one time I did have a serious go, they cheated. There you are.
So my God, it's Trumpian.
Can you see? I can put the pieces of the puzzle together. And actually, after listening to that, I think, he's going to stand.
He's going to stand in.
Well, it's all the speculation is potentially Clacton, which is, I think, where he once stood before in a slightly different seat. He stood in Thanet before. That was one of the closest attempts he got. He stood in Buckingham against the Speaker, John Bercow, at the time. He stood in various seats, but obviously not got absolutely anywhere near actually winning. But Clacton is one of those areas where, according to polling, which has been done by the Reform Party, if he was to stand, he could do potentially very well. Now, what does it obviously mean? If the fact that Nigel Farage is talking about the election and saying the election's already lost, does this essentially mean that he's saying, well, actually, if I stand, it won't matter if I split the Conservative vote. It won't matter if I actually stop a few Conservatives from winning. The election's over. Labour are going to win anyway. It's going to be a landslide. Obviously, the Conservatives would say the opposite. They'd say, well, actually...
Labour wouldn't want him saying this either. They want turnout, don't they?
Exactly. And for the Labour Party, it would allow them to win in some seats where potentially Reform will help split that Conservative vote. But for the Conservatives, if he does decide to win, it would definitely mean wipeout territory for them. It would make things even worse than it already is for the Conservatives. And obviously, they're not moving in the polls at the moment. We've seen very little movement, and the Conservatives are getting to start worrying about what that does look like in the polls. But yes, the idea that Nigel Farage thinks potentially the election's already lost, he might just think, well, what's the point? I'm not going to make too much of a difference anyway. And in that clip that you just heard, he's talking about what he thinks happens next, which is the rebuilding, the opposition, what that means, and what a challenge to the Labour Party, if they do get into government, would mean. He says that means seats. He says that means reform. So is he going to be a part of that?
Didn't he say over the weekend, I want to take over the Conservative Party and rebuild it?
Yes, he did. And today, Kemi Badenoch was asked about this, and she said, absolutely no way would I be serving in any form of party alongside people like Nigel Farage. And it's very clear that Nigel Farage, sort of put a tentative olive branch out to the Conservatives last week, saying, I'll be up for a conversation with you. They said, absolutely not. We're not interested in talking to you in any way. And now he's saying, I want to be the opposition. I want to take over the Conservatives as that party.
Is there a connection between those two events, do you think, that his nose was out of joint?
Look, I mean, he's
Essentially.
obviously, of the potential things that could happen this afternoon, one of those things we were thinking of is he going to stand to be an MP, or is he going to announce some form of non-aggression pact with the Conservatives where he won't stand, or the Reform Party won't stand? But everything that the Reform Party have said, everything the Conservative Party have said, it doesn't sound like we are anywhere near that happening. Both sides completely slagging each other off. So I don't think that's very likely at all. But yes, if it did that happens, it would be real nightmare scenario for the Conservative Party, because it just makes their woes just even worse.
I mean, that's definitely the major take if he does stand. But I also think Labour does not want people to hear, surely would not want people to hear, it's over, stay at home, it's fine.
They can't be complacent.
No.
And absolutely, and if there is a chance that this stops people from turning out, this stops this from happening, that would be bad news for the Labour Party as well.
Are we entirely sure he's not just going to announce that he's lost his Union Jack shoes?
Because you never know with Nigel Farage. Maybe he is walking us up all the garden path and then just absolutely telling us nothing.
Well, by saying absolutely not at the beginning and then this.
Exactly. Look, I think it's us all of it in Westminster are all speculating furiously about what this could be, but we think that's the most likely outcome. But yes, look, who knows? I mean, he said I will be making an emergency general election announcement at 4 p.m. today. When I spoke to the Reform Party earlier today, I said, "What have you guys got going on today?" "Oh, nothing much." If that was the case, I don't think they would have probably said that. I think this has caught people off the hoof. It's caught people off guard.
I remember when I used to broadcast in the other place, as they say in politics, every Monday we used to talk to whoever the presenter and reporter was on Panorama that Monday evening, and we'd do a preview of the Panorama, and it would always be described as a special, Panorama special. And I realised quite quickly that some of them were specials, as in they were 2 hours long and they'd involve 3 years investigation, but most of them were just an edition of Panorama.
Sure.
And so I ended up calling everything on my programme one day, here's the special weather before the special news, and then the special report about something special. There's a touch of that going on here, isn't there, with the emergency?
There is. But also we did hear from Nigel Farage and Richard Tice last week. They were speaking about immigration together at a joint press conference last week. He was saying how he didn't want to be campaigning he was going to be campaigning all over the country, and that was much easier for him to do so rather than being tied down to a seat. I can't think of anything else that's happened in terms of breaking news that he needs to be responding to today. What else has happened for the Labour Party that he needs to hold an emergency press conference?
Well, listen,
Natasha,
I'm going to have to let you go because I've got an emergency call from Alan in Manchester to take.
I really want to know, Alan.
I'll see you at 4. Let's find out at 4. Stay with LBC for that. Thanks very much indeed. Natasha Clark, LBC's political editor.